Part two. When did part two come out?
74.
What happened?
Yeah, something happened in 74. I don't know. Wasn't that the missile crisis? Wasn't that Cuban missile crisis? I don't know. What happened?
Sure.
Was there a famine?
Wasn't it 9/11? Did 9/11 happen?
9/11. It did happen, but not the same event. All rise. The honorable judge is now proceeding. Or is it presiding?
Whatever you want to take it as.
Go with it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a film court for you today. We left off last week's conversation with Godfather Part 1 or Godfather Part 2, although I think they just call it Godfather. I don't think they call it Part 1, but we'll
Is it called Part 1?
No,
We call Part 1 Part 1 or is it just Godfather?
It's just Godfather. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have a court session in order to hash out exactly which Godfather is indeed the best Godfather. Okay, we'll stop with that crazy music because it was getting a little wild. So we watched Godfather, The Godfather, and then we watched Godfather Part 2, and we said we did a press play on both, and we said we'd come back, we talk about, hash it out, to deliberate about which film is the better film. It's an age-old question, right? Ever since they both came out, they both have gotten critical acclaim. Some would say that Godfather Part 2 is arguably the best sequel of all time. So without further ado,
I've got some fire, man. Listen, I've been thinking about this. Yeah. I wrote down some notes.
Okay.
I read a bunch of articles and shit. I got some heat for you.
All right.
So I will present my case first.
Sure.
Your Honor, my client. My client, The Godfather 1. At its core, at the root of its story, and let's talk about that story for a second, right? So this is it's somewhat of not necessarily your origin story, but it tells the early family story of the Corleones. You have a young Michael Corleone, you have a young Vito, a young Sonny, you have Don Vito Corleone, who is the patriarch, the leader of the family, and it's telling the story. The family's currently in power. Or not currently in power, but the family is, prominent family in New York City. They're obviously in the organized crime business. They're obviously in the crime business, right? But the story isn't really about that. It's a family story. Mm-hmm. And you get all of that. You get all of the family. You get Marlon Brando as Don Vito Corleone. Mm-hmm. You get to see the love for his family and the hope that he has for his family. You get to see Sonny, who in his father's absence, when Vito is shot, kind of takes on the leadership role in the family. Maybe he doesn't go about things the right way. Sonny's a bit more abrasive, but you get to see the eldest sons have the opportunity to lead the family. Sure. Fredo, the middle child, you get to see his struggles finding his place right in the family. Michael, you see so much growth in Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, from this I'm not going to say meek, but this the young man who goes off into the military, who returns a war hero, who then reluctantly steps into the family business, and by the end of the movie you see him kind of do a 360 and become a completely different man. You see him not just enter the family business, but take on the helm of it. So there's the family story there, there's character building, there's development, there's the score is grand.
You know what they call this? They call this filibustering, when you just keep talking and then nothing else. Get to the point.
I'm presenting my client's story. Okay,
get to the point.
So I think what The Godfather Part 1 does better than Godfather Part 2 is the story itself, the family story, character development. You see wins, you see losses. You get much more of that than you get in Godfather 2, which is really just a story of Michael Corleone, Al Pacino's character, kind of just what happens when power corrupts.
Okay, so what is your ultimate verdict, or not verdict, since you're
the original? The Godfather Part 1 just has a better storyline, has better character development. I think better acting.
Okay, here's what I'll present to the court. Okay. What I would present to the court is that even the very question we're framing the wrong way. What is the better film, right? Mm-hmm. as with all.
I object.
I mean, okay, cool.
Objections.
The act of making a film, right? It's by its very nature artistic, right? And we all know that art is subjective, right? So that we may see the same thing, but pull two very different things out of it. So when you ask what the better film is, depends on who the fuck you're asking. It depends on what's important to them, right? Furthermore, the question gets brought up, what's the more iconic film, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though that's not even a question, right? I think that both films, in fact, all three films, they all have iconic moments, right? Like in part one, make you an offer you can't refuse. Right?
Yeah, I think part one has the most iconic, the single lines.
You stole the words out of my mouth. There's so many quotable moments from the first Godfather, and so many memorable visuals, right?
Yeah.
Like, so Marlon Brando sitting in the chair, his face dark, all that.
The horse's head in the bed,
horse's head
take it to the mattress.
Exactly. So many memorable scenes.
Yeah.
I think it's not even a question which is the more iconic film. I think because of the presence of Brando, it's that the nod for that has to go to one. But I think the thing that everybody is currently missing in this is that the reason why we're all having such a hard time answering any of these questions is because even the premise of all that is incorrect. The truth is, it's actually just one long ass movie. If you really think about it, it's the Godfather, the original, is really a story about how Michael comes into power, right? Godfather Part 2, just like any great fucking either sequel or continuation of a story, it's just literally a continuation of that same thought pattern of, okay, Michael comes into power. What happens when he comes into power, right? You can look at 1 and 2 back to back and really just, you might have to take a couple pee breaks in there. It's like watching, I remember watching Endgame thinking, I don't know, I got to make some bathroom decisions here. I don't know. Yeah. But I think that it's just one long ass movie. They both have their sort of like themes and things like that, right? And they they both talk about family and they look at it from different aspects, but ultimately it's Michael's story that we're following. Whether he's the protagonist or not is something else to be argued, but we're following his journey here. So we're seeing him coming home and being less a part of the family. And then by the end of the movie, he's at the head of the family. Right. And then in part 2, we're seeing how he tries to maintain power and tries to, and how he sort of accepts his he leans into whatever his perceptions of family, of the mafia family, all that is. So the point that I'm making to the court is that asking what the better movie is the incorrect question. Asking what the more iconic movie is also, I think, the incorrect question, because they're invalidated by the fact that it really is just one long ass movie that we're watching, and the fact that Francis Ford Coppola pretty much brought back everybody from the first movie. It's just a continuation of the story. So saying what's better or worse, I think maybe people have their preferences in terms of what they believe is better or worse. Like, I personally think that 1 is for me, or actually, I'm sorry, 2 is for me the film that I prefer most, because I love seeing the duality of seeing an earlier Vito Corleone compared to a more what's happening now with Michael, and sort of seeing the juxtaposition of that. I love seeing sort of that sort of.
Well, Your Honor, the people of the jury are here to make a decision. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure, we can say both films are great, but I'm here to argue my case and to defend my client. My client is The Godfather Part 1. The film is more iconic. Mm-hmm. It is nostalgic. It has those iconic moments, those one-liners that we remember. The horses take it to the mattress. We've got, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse, right?
Yeah.
The Godfather Part 2 simply builds off of the foundation that was laid by The Godfather Part 1. It lives in its
Are you
shadow.
preaching,
Godfather
or
Part
are
1
you
is the better
arguing
film.
for-
Sure.
Okay.
In Godfather Part 2, Francis Ford Coppola had a lot more to work with. He had, they were able to
Very
film
animated right now,
in
yeah.
Lake Tahoe, Nevada. They were to film in DC and New York. They had more to work with. But a young Francis Ford Coppola in The Godfather 1, it was the fight. He was fighting for his job the entire
I
film,
see.
right?
You fell off
And
track.
that-
You were on
Yeah.
you're on a wave,
Yeah.
and then you just fell off the edge of that
No,
wave.
no,
I
no,
don't-
I'm still on
yeah.
it. I'm still on it. He was
Okay.
fighting for his job the whole film. We've got a young Al Pacino. Again, there's story, there's character development, the score, the cinematography is artful, is masterful. I present the case that Godfather Part 1 is the best film. People of the jury will let them decide.
Well, I will say that there is ultimately no true answer to this. Like I said,
Sure.
because it's all subjective. But I will say that I'm correct, and I presented the better argument. But
That's not my first year law
yeah.
student. But I think I did pretty well. I billed at 400 an hour.
Fellas, in this case, I am the jury. And Part 1 made $287 million at the box office versus Part 2 only $88 million.
Case closed, Your Honor.
What happened that year? What year did it come out? That was what, 1970 something? What, 70?
Yeah, what
Which
happened
one?
that year?
Part 2. When did Part 2 come out?
74.
What happened? in
Yeah,
74?
something happened in 74. I
What
don't
year in
know.
74?
Wasn't that the missile crisis?
recession?
Wasn't that Cuban Missile Crisis? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Was
What
it?
happened?
Sure.
Was there a
Yeah,
famine?
wasn't
or
it
something?
9/11?
What happened?
Did 9/11 happen? I don't know.
9/11. It did happen, but not the same event. But yeah, to your point, I think both films are great. I think again, Godfather Part 2, there's just so much more story there. There's so much more to work with. Again, like whether it's location, characters. I think the character who played Fredo, Cazale, something. I think. What he did as Fredo, taking this like meager character, this kind of like character who wasn't really part of the story in Part 1, and making it like somewhat the center of the story in Part 2. And then in Part 2, I mean, I think Al Pacino delivers some beautiful lines. What did he say to Fredo? He was like, you betrayed me, or like you're not my brother, or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I forget the exact
remember
line.
when he
but
kissed Fredo and he was like, I know it was you, Fredo.
Yeah.
That was like, to me, that scene was just like, oh man, like when someone betrays you, that hurts.
Yeah.
When you let them know that they betrayed you, that hurts too, right?
Yeah.
And then when you betrayed somebody and they know, they let you know.
I'm gonna need you to
Yikes.
draw a diagram or something. I got lost. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that was Film Court. So yeah,
I took that W.
Let it. Sure you did. Let us know in the comment section below what you think of the film, or what you think is the better film, if you even believe that is the correct question in first place. Comment below with how you feel one way or another.
And if you need representation in court, call Finley and Finley Law Firm.
That's not the same thing, but all right. If I had a gavel,
Case
I would
closed.
bang the gavel. Case closed. Okay.